Welcome to another transformative episode of Money 911, the show where health, wealth, and peace of mind intersects to elevate your life. Today, we're diving into the most profound, universal journeys we all share, the transition from life to afterlife. Joining us is William Hughes, MED, MFT, founder of the Shared Crossing Project, and the world's leading authority on shared death experiences. Today, we'll explore how extraordinary end-of-the-life experiences teach us not only how to die well, but also how to live better. Get ready for an inspiring and deeply human conversation that will shift your perspective on life, death, and everything in between. All right, William, it is a complete honor and pleasure to have you here today with us. And I came upon your work through, my own process, and it's just really inspired me. You reveal extraordinary insights with shared death experiences. And I really wanted to get this out to people so they know they're not alone, because I've had the same experiences, but who do you talk to about it? So what is one lesson from the afterlife that profoundly has shaped your understanding of why and how we should live today?
Well, good. First of all, thank you for having me, Chris. What I study is the shared death experience. I'm a psychotherapist. I work in grief and bereavement. And I know that so many people who work in the end of life field, whether it's estate planning or even financial planning, this issue of death and dying is kind of the elephant in the room. Um, and I've taken the approach basically because so many people were coming into my office and asking me, I want you to know if I'm crazy or not. Like, I had this experience when somebody died, and usually it's pretty recent. I mean, but I can have people come in 5, 6, 7 years later, I mean, and say the same thing. But they come in and they're very serious, a bit concerned, a bit anxious, and they say, hey, at the moment that my loved one died, I felt like I went with them. I felt like I crossed this veil. All of a sudden, I'm in this other beautiful place, but I'm with my loved one. And I'm seeing them, and I'm seeing that they're alive and well and happy. And sometimes they talk about seeing deceased relatives, predeceased relatives that are there to greet them. Sometimes they talk about elevated spirit beings, light beings that are seemingly there to guide them. There's often a big, beautiful light in the distance that they're heading towards. And the realm itself is is more real than real. So when we ask, hey, can you tell us about what that place was like you were in? They often go, oh, it was so real, hyper real, ultra alive, much more real and than the earthly human existence. So there's no real sense of convincing them, not that I would want to, but convincing them that this wasn't a real, authentic, genuine experience for them that for most is the most profound experience in their life. And so when they come and see me, they're looking for affirmation. Not that, they just don't want to be told this was a brain disturbance of some kind or an hallucination. But now my team, the Shared Crossing Research Initiative, we've collected 600 or more cases. We're the world's leading authority on the shared death experience, having published in the leading magazines, both medical journals and academic journals. The one journal that has really touched us was the American Journal for Hospice and Palliative Medicine, which is the top journal that is really for those who work directly in end of life. And when the reviewers, saw our article and they commented on it, they said, we've always heard of these experiences, but no one's ever researched them the way your team did. Thank you very much for this robust contribution. So you asked specifically, what do these experiences teach us about the afterlife? And I think this is the best news of all, because these experiences can be very surreal, supernatural, can be almost sound like, you know, spiritual Disneyland, if you will, because they're so positive. But what we learn from them is that the afterlife is indeed, from everything we can tell, and I should add, all of my colleagues who study these end of life experiences, I study the shared death experience and other end of life experiences, but primarily the shared death experience. But others who study post death visitations or after death communication or pre death dreams and visions, almost all of us are convinced that if you're going to hear anything about the afterlife, it's going to be positive. We're not hearing negativity or hell realms or anything like that. Um, but what we do know is that I shouldn't say we know, what we hear is that it's beautiful. We are greeted by deceased loved ones or people that tend to know us. There's like a welcoming party when we cross over. Uh, the feelings that are experienced there are sublime, like feelings we don't have here. Uh, it's like gratitude, appreciation, myriad of forms of love, curiosity, wonder, awe, all of kind of what Abraham Maslow would call those peak experiences. They're kind of all uh, congealed into this incredible experience that we call the afterlife. So, in terms of what you bring back from that experience, the experiencers report a knowing that their deceased loved one is alive and well, a knowing that they'll see them again, uh, a knowing that death is not to be feared. Their anxiety, if they had it before, is lowered tremendously, to the extent that most of our experiencers say that they're excited uh, for their time of death. They don't want to die now, but they're excited for when their moment comes. And this really helps people's grief, because the shared death experience contextualizes the loss of their loved one. So while they miss their loved one in the human form, they understand this is a natural part of life. Everyone has to live a human life, and they eventually die. And then there's a reunion sometime later in what we loosely call the afterlife. So that's by way of introduction.
Right, right. William, your work just reveals the beauty of shared death experiences. And I've had my own, and and it's one of the best experiences I've had on this planet. And which has caused me to literally shift and live my legacy now. And which is really exciting, because part of it is healing through understanding. And for those that are grieving that haven't had that experience, or how can the insights of the shared crossings offer comfort and healing? you know they Maybe they haven't had that experience, so you seem to have a roadmap to connect that with people.
Well, there's this theory that was put forth by a near-death experience researcher, a colleague. His name is Kenneth Ring, and he never had a near-death experience himself. And this is different from a shared death experience, but they're very, very similar in terms of what you see and experience. A near-death experience happens when someone has a brush with death and they're heading out of the human plane, if you will, into the afterlife, and they see a lot of the afterlife, but then they come back and they get another chance. But this is the initial stages of the afterlife that shared death experiencers observe as well when they see their departing loved ones transitioning into the initial stages of the afterlife. And I'm citing what my colleague Ken said, because he talked about the near-death experience being a benign virus. In
Mm-hmm.
other words, if you can study the shared death experience and get the virus of it in you, It's benign. Once you study these and see these and hear all these stories, you begin to realize, how could all of these people be reporting the same identical geography in the afterlife, and they don't even know each other, and they didn't even hear about it before their loved one died, and they're all scared to talk about it because they're afraid that people are going to call them crazy, and yet they're transformed. So, my book that I wrote with Simon and Schuster a couple of years ago, At Heaven's Door, was designed to inoculate people with the benign virus. I share 28 stories, different stories. So my goal is that people, like, at some point in the book, put the book down, lean back against their chair and say, these people can't be making this stuff up. It's too similar.
Right.
It's too powerful. And they're too ordinary and normal of people. Like, we're not talking about
Right.
people that are, on the fringe of society. These are teachers and nurses and bankers and, department store workers and bank clerks. I mean, these are normal people that are having these experiences, and these experiences transform them. They cannot let them go. They cannot live their life without realizing, this was too important of an experience for me ever to live my life differently from. And I see you acknowledging that that's your experience too.
Yeah. Well, that's why I wanted to have you on because you've made a bridge here for people that it's okay to talk about it, and you giving like a roadmap through it, and hearing that someone on the other side of the planet had the same experience, and having a few of them myself in my own lifetime, and the similarity in that experience. It was a shared death experience, right? But I listened to a lot of the near death ones too, and it's just it's inspiring. It's so interesting how it shifts the mindset automatically. It's not like you have to really do anything, but you, you've made this bridge. You got the science and the sacredness sort of woven together, and it's extraordinary. It's only extraordinary because it's not talked about, right?
That's right.
It's talked about, then the whole process could be a celebration of life instead of this black mourning, condolences, and his heaviness, and which puts everybody into that hard grief. And that was part of my purpose to get you on here, because I talk about death and taxes and all of those, estate planning things. This is really this is the whole thing of life to me, having all of this, right?
Yeah, I mean, I like to say that the shared death experience brings us into a new relationship, not just with death and dying, but with life
Right.
itself.
Right.
If you know that this is what's coming to you and to all your loved ones, it's a great relief.
Yeah.
Uh, but it's also, and you mentioned this, for people who have had the shared death experience, and I'm one of those, I've had multiples, that after you have it, you realize, oh my gosh, this life actually has a purpose. We're not here indefinitely, and we're certainly not here just to watch television and football games. You know, we most of us are here with a purpose.
Yep.
And a first step after you have an experience like this is to feel the weight of, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
um, I'm here for a short period of time, and I I need to make something of this life, because in a certain way, this may not be our true home. Our real place of belonging is likely not planet Earth.
Right.
So while we're here, we need to find out why we're here. And you, like me, have a very dedicated mission, and we pursue it every day. And it's a lot of work, but it also is joyful when we see the positive influence that it has on people. So
Totally life changing. I think for me, it made everything go faster. I started connecting it just did it automatically, uh, from not just conception of, living forever or everlasting life, but the reality that the, the expressions of the other side are so much and so incredibly beautiful that this is just for a little flash. And the smallest, and the other thing was the smallest of things, the little bit of kindness seems to be exalted. Like that was really the important thing. The love that we have for each other really was the big deal. Not that I was the doctor and I invented something, or not that that's not good or bad, but that's really what it's about. And so that's made it transforms a fear into grace, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Oh, yes. That's a nice way to say it. It transforms our fear of dying into this sense of appreciation and the notion that that life is a blessing. It's a grace to be here and to have the opportunity to love. I
Right.
mean, there are so many opportunities for us to be kind to one another, to lend a helping hand, to offer what we've learned, our gifts to others for the betterment of humanity and the betterment of our planet. If that's, you know, to live in balance and to really appreciate that all the beings that are here are all here temporarily. And so we're all trying to make the best of it. There's no instruction book for being here, but kindness is the common kind of agreed upon um, truth for living a wise and conscious life. I think all the great perennial wisdom traditions will talk about that in different ways, being kind and exercising love. And it's a great opportunity. But the other realization is you don't have, an eternal amount of time here. So a lot of experiencers will say, shared death experiencers will say, I came back and I realized I had to get about, my life's purpose and mission like yesterday.
Right. And it's shocking how fast it goes. I mean, the life here. And when you're in, but when you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, probably took me till 50 to really realize that, you're not going to live forever in this body, right? And like you say, finding your purpose and the legacy and the impact, the fulfillment of what your purpose is. But I wanted to ask you, what kind of advice would you give someone who wants, maybe approaching the end of life, or has family members, parents, or whoever that are coming to the near their experience? What would you tell them how they can do that experience without fear and to have peace and courage and connection and maybe
Yeah.
celebration of life instead of the gloom and doom of death?
Well, there are a few steps that I've found can be useful. The first is to talk openly about death as a reality. There's no real reason but fear itself uh, to not talk about it. You don't have to wait till someone gets a diagnosis or gets elderly to talk about death and dying. It's a conversation that should be exercised throughout life. The great Don Juan, the main character in Carlos Castaneda's book. I love what he says. He says, Don Juan, when he's teaching about how to live the wise life, live life with death over your left shoulder all the time. Talk to death. Ask what death has to say to you now. So this is just a long-winded way of saying, bring death out of the closet. Put it on your dining room table with your loved ones, your family and friends, and say, can we talk about death? What do we think about it? How are we prepared for it? What is each of us wanting around death and dying? What are we afraid of? What are our questions? Begin an exploration of every person's relationship to death and dying. And then the next step is, that's step number one, exploration. Step number two is make a plan. Really express what you're needing and wanting. For some people, that's I want to stay here as long as I possibly can because I have family members, grandchildren, whatever. If I go to the ER with a heart attack, I want every means available to keep me alive. Okay. For other people, it may be different. I'm in this camp, you know?
Yeah.
I've lived the best life I can every day. I don't know when I'm going to die, but if it's going to cause me pain or my loved ones pain to watch me suffer and go through it and live the rest of my life in a compromised manner, no, thank you. I want quality of life over quantity of life. And it's really an American modern obsession with quantity of everything.
Yeah.
Bigger houses, more stuff, more money, more. Boy, you apply that to life. We've got a medical system that can give that to you. Our medical system is really good at keeping people alive. But the quality of life that those people are living, do you want to be in an ICU hooked up
Right.
to tubes and oxygen, just watching your heartbeat on a monitor for days, hours, years? And I'm telling you, there are a lot of people that are living that life. So you need to have conversations with your loved ones about what you want in regards to that. And those are, the obvious advanced care directives, but they're not, I mean, there are simple documents now that are available. Your local, on everyone's general practitioner will have an advanced care directive document in their office. So I could give you names of them, but I'd rather have you use and fill out what your local community doctors are providing, because that's what your community will be responsive to when you go to their hospital. So that's step number 2. You have a comment?
Oh, I was just going to say that, I've been doing, we have an estate planning company called
Yeah.
Trust Unlimited. We made over 6,000 trusts. And in talking with people, this, you know, I wanted to blow this up even more about the conversation, because even in my own family, I had the two extremes of the one that, was going to, live forever. And the one was like, I don't want to be in this broken body, right? And do all the tubes and the things and no cut and paste for me, right? And to be able to honor whatever the person wants in that journey, most people wait till they're dying before they get any of that together. And that's part of my passion, is to talk about that. So I was just so happy to hear you say that in that conversation. Okay, so number 3 was
Yeah. So in your exploration, that's kind of part 1, but I think most people begin with number 1 and then number 2, but then they get to something else. And that's what I call the golden chapter of end of life. And that is, once you've figured out, explored and what you want, there's something else that comes up. And it's this natural thing that after you put everything in place, all of a sudden something comes up. Well, now that I've got that in place, now there's this other kind of line of inquiry that comes up. It's very interesting. Once you get the practical, the pragmatic, the medical kind of figured out, then you end up asking, well, I wonder if there's something more here. I have, gone through this process multiple times. And once we get all this stuff done, invariably, the advanced care directives and the conversations with the family, and, the daughter crying when the father says, I don't want to be on an intubator, let me die. Oh, Dad, I can't live without you, because I don't want to be alive if I can't walk around and mow my lawn and say hello to my neighbors. I don't. And so once you go through that, then you get everything agreed upon. And by the way, these are iterative process. People change and. In the midst of this. But the piece I want to bring up is what I would call more the spiritual side of this.
good. Yeah.
Because once you kind of deal with the practical, then the question is, I wonder if there's something more here.
Yep.
And that's a deeper conversation about, what do you think happens to us after we die? So now that we've done the human body aspect of this, let me go when it's my time, or try as long as you want. Then the question comes up, well, what's next? And the what's next is what we talked about earlier. These are explore the spiritual aspects of dying, because this brings up the question of, is there actually a continuation of consciousness beyond human death? Is there an afterlife? Do we survive? I've already said to you what my research has taught me, and people have had these experiences. But everybody really should probably do that exploration on their own and see what they find out. And there's a lot of great resources looking at what actually happens. And then you might want to talk to your friends about and family members about sharing your beliefs about that, because it's very rich. It's very rich to talk about what if we do go on, and what if this is just one of the um, venues, if you will, that we interact together, but then we go into another dimension and we interact there, and then there's other parts of the universe and we happen to meet there, and it's really quite beautiful to have these conversations. And and I think most people actually, they do studies every 5 years in the United States. Pew is one of the great statistical surveyors, and they often do a study on people's beliefs in the afterlife. And throughout the last 50, 60 years, they do these studies, and the people's belief in the afterlife has remained relatively the same. It's in the high, 70s, 80s, and sometimes even as close as almost getting up to the 90s about people believing in an afterlife, and a benevolent one. So I don't think people should be afraid about talking about what's next, because so many people believe that there is an afterlife. So I just invite people to lean into that and have those very rich conversations. Have you ever thought about what happens to you after you die?
That's so good. And that,
Yeah.
to me, well, I kind of got bored upside down, and that was always on my mind at first, because I it always bothered me. You'd go to school, you get married, have kids, and die. It was like the dying was like, what? Didn't something was missing, right?
Yeah.
And
Well, death frames our life.
mhm, yeah, you know, we could go on and on, and I'm definitely going to have you back because you're working on a movie. Tell me a little bit. Tell everybody about what's
Thanks.
going on.
Well, we actually just finished a short film that was done. I get called a lot to help people at end of life. I get calls really from all over the world, and I welcome those calls, because if you have that much interest and passion about doing your own end of life, or those with your loved one, what we call a conscious, connected, and loving end of life. And then I teach along with that how to have a shared death experience. So this couple called me from the Bay Area, and this is just 6 months ago, to say that the woman called and she said, my husband has ALS. He's decided not to go full term. He's decided to do medical aid in dying, but we'd like to prepare for this as consciously as possible, and we'd like to have the shared death experience so that when he dies, he can show me where he is and that he survived death. Well, this began a relationship that I had with them, and I was their counselor through a number of conversations, and getting to know them and doing the steps I just talked about, going through that. And then I asked them if I could film them, some of these conversations, and they said yes. So we went up there and we filmed to their home in the Bay Area, and then we actually went back again and did another film shoot after he had died. He used medical aid in dying. He was a lovely man, very conscious, very sure about what he wanted to do. And his wife was very supportive. They had other family members and friends there. It was a elegant, excuse me, elegant, beautiful. I say elegance, it's kind of elegant. I mean, it was like they really, decorated their home for a sacred ceremony of death. They lit, hundreds of candles and flowers, and neighbors came by to say goodbye. It was such a sacred and conscious goodbye. You know, Compare that with the person in the ICU with the family saying, no, don't let him go, keep him going. This is completely different.
Right.
But anyway, we filmed all this, and we filmed it for our feature film, but then we realized, oh, wow, this would make a really great short film. So that short film is just come out, but it's not really available to the public yet because we're showing it in film festivals. It's called Suffering into Gold, because the wife said, we turned suffering being the death sentence of having ALS, we transformed it into gold. And that's a very beautiful, and the film is being very well received. Um, and so that's our first one, but that'll be part of probably our feature film. The first feature documentary film on the shared death experience will have, a half dozen to a dozen cases. We'll put some ones that are similarly together to let people know this is how similar they are. Like I have a number of cases where women have babies in utero or stillborn, and they have shared death experiences with their babies, and they're just so powerful. And so we have women, one in Australia, one in West Virginia, and one in Seattle, all from different spiritual, religious backgrounds, and yet they report the same connection, communication, and love with their newborn who transitions right away. So that's just one case. And then we have emergency room doctors who talk about having shared death experiences with their patients who are dying. Like they're dying, car accident, and all of a sudden they're working on them, and all of a sudden they see the patient floating away in the operating theater, and the guy and the patient says to the doctor, "Thanks so much for trying to help me. I love, really appreciate it. I'm on my way." And the doctor is like, "What?" So we have very powerful experiences, and that film won't be out for another year or so, but stay tuned. I'd love to come back and talk about that film with you and your community, your viewers
It would be
later.
a complete honor. It's
Yeah.
a sacred transition, a life well lived, and and I'm really glad to hear that you're putting that, you're downloading all of that.
Thank you.
Really exciting. And tell everybody how they can get in contact with you too.
Thanks so much. So we have a website, sharedcrossing.com. And when you go there, by the way, the website is going to be revised in the coming months as that when the film comes out. So I say that as a way of kind of sheepishly saying our website has not been updated in a couple of years. And I feel like it looks that way. I mean, it's a good website. There's a lot of information on it, but it's graphically not up to speed because the technology and the visual side has improved so much that these new websites are spectacular. And
Yeah,
we're going to have one of those, just not yet, just we're waiting for the film to come out, and we're going to do it with that brand.
sure.
But yeah, you'll find good resources there. You can learn about the shared death experience. You can learn about other end of life experiences. You can see on our story collection. You'll go there and you'll see six or so shared death experiences. You'll hear experiencers tell their stories in about 4 or 5, 6 minutes. So you get to hear more of these fascinating shared death experiences. Yeah, and get on our email list because we have courses, and we'll announce when the movie comes out, so you can go to a local theater and see it. But also, there's courses we offer from time to time. So if you want to work with me and participate in a course, we actually have on-demand courses. If you want to say, I want to study the shared death experience on my own terms in the silence of my own home, you can get an on-demand course and you can just, listen to it with your friends, what have you. So, the last thing I'll say is, if you're interested in contributing to the work we're doing in some way, feel free to reach out to me personally or the website. There's a place there because we are a nonprofit and we appreciate everyone's support because we are doing very unique work in the world. We know that. so,
Yeah,
so
definitely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Love is limitless for sure. Well, thank you so much, William, and we'll look forward to having you back. You keep us posted, even when the first one comes out. We'll maybe do a little series and wrap around, you know, bringing that to people a lot
Great.
more.
Great.
So, thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
All right. Take
Been a
care.
pleasure.
All right. You too. Thank you for joining us today on this extraordinary journey into the mysteries of life and death with William Peters. I hope today's conversation inspired you to embrace life with greater intention and compassion. Remember, every moment is an opportunity to create a legacy of love, connection, and meaning. If you're ready to explore more ways to live a healthy, happy, and purposeful life, visit me at healthymoneyhappylife.com. And don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends. And hey, leave a review. They help us roll this along so we can continue this transformative conversations. Until next time, live fully, love deeply, and keep building your fabulous future. There's so much to learn about healthy money. I hope today's discussion brings you one step closer to securing and protecting your future. So you can get started on the right foot, go to meetwithchrismiller.com and schedule your free financial fitness strategy session. Thank you for listening, and please subscribe to Money 911 so you don't miss our next episode, which includes health, wealth, and peace of mind.